Howdy and welcome back. Once again, if you haven't had a chance to watch my first video summarizing the overall Bitcoin protocol, I encourage you to do so now. The video started off with the premise that Alice wants to transfer some Bitcoin to Bob without either party having to trust any middleman, intermediary, or other participant in the process. But what does trust really mean in this context? It means that Alice and Bob want to participate in a transaction that doesn't rely upon a third party to ensure against an interruption, delay, or alteration of the transaction once Alice initiates the transfer to Bob. Although I'll ultimately return to Alice transferring Bitcoin to Bob, I now realize that a more appropriate place to begin is from Bob's perspective. That is, Bob is someone who hasn't participated in the Bitcoin network, wants to buy some Bitcoin. Okay, great, but what choices does Bob have to make the purchase? And more importantly, how is trust affected by the choice he makes? Bob has a bunch of options where he can make the purchase, including using a Bitcoin exchange, where individuals can receive Bitcoin in exchange for some other cryptocurrency, or fiat currencies such as dollars, pounds, or euros. In this type of transfer trade, the exchange acts as a trusted third party clearing the trade. That is, the participants selling and transferring Bitcoin trust the exchange to deliver whatever currency they requested in return for their Bitcoin, and the participant buying the Bitcoin, Bob, trusts the exchange to deliver the Bitcoin for his currency. Typically, the seller transfers their Bitcoin to the exchange, which involves the Bitcoin protocol and the live blockchain, and the exchange in turn credits the seller's internal account with whatever currency they requested. Although the exchange can be assured that the seller's Bitcoin is now in their control after the transaction is validated using the Bitcoin protocol, the seller is relying upon an internal exchange account that has nothing to do with the Bitcoin protocol. The ledger entry is simply an obligation by the exchange to pay the seller some currency upon request. Therefore, because the Bitcoin protocol isn't involved in this part of the transaction, the seller can't rely upon it to enforce the exchange's obligation. The same is true for the other side of the transaction. That is, Bob sends an amount of currency to the exchange, and the exchange credits Bob's internal account with an amount of Bitcoin previously agreed upon. This internal account also has nothing to do with the Bitcoin protocol and live blockchain. Therefore, until Bob initiates a request to transfer the Bitcoin referenced in his internal account and the exchange initiates the transfer, he can't rely upon the Bitcoin protocol to enforce the exchange's obligation to make the transfer. So counterparty risk exists between Bob and the exchange to initiate a Bitcoin transaction upon request, as well as counterparty risk between the seller of Bitcoin and the exchange to transfer the proceeds of the sale. The Bitcoin protocol doesn't handle or protect either party with regard to enforcement of these obligations of the exchange's internal ledger. Bottom line, Bob and the seller are trusting the exchange to fulfill key aspects of the transaction. The reason I'm pointing this out is to differentiate where the Bitcoin protocol is involved in Alice's sale and Bob's purchase, and more importantly, where it's not involved. The Bitcoin protocol has many features. However, it's not designed to create trustless exchanges of Bitcoin with some other asset. It was designed instead to create trustless exchanges of Bitcoin with itself, and I believe this distinction is important to understand from the beginning. In addition to using an exchange, Bob could purchase Bitcoin directly from an individual, in this case Alice. This is sometimes called an over-the-counter transaction. Similar to an exchange trade, the Bitcoin protocol only concerns itself with the transfer of Bitcoin and not the transfer of dollars Bob will be giving to Alice. Bob and Alice will have to determine how the exchange of dollars will take place and whether it will occur before, during, or after the transaction of Bitcoin. Therefore, Alice has counterparty risk with Bob to transfer the dollars to Alice, and Bob has counterparty risk until Alice initiates the transfer of Bitcoin to Bob. To be clear, I'm only interested in exploring the transfer of Bitcoin from Alice to Bob. However, I wanted to point out the risks inherent in exchanging Bitcoin for another asset. Separate from counterparty risk, both Alice and Bob want to participate in the transfer of Bitcoin without trusting a third party in the middle to enforce the transfer. In the next video, I'll delve deeper into what functions a bank performs as a typical third-party intermediary of a transaction. Exploring these functions will provide a better understanding of the requirements that the Bitcoin protocol must implement to accomplish the same transfer, but without the need of trust by participants in the exchange. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button as well as the subscribe button. I look forward to the next video, and thanks for watching.